Hi, and welcome to Kismet. I'm Jackie Abramov, and I'm so happy you're here. This podcast is an offering to support your remembering, your reconnecting, contemplating, and just stirring your soul to align to your authenticity, autonomy, and your personal power. So I'm very grateful you're here, and it's my hope that this will inspire deeper wisdom for you whenever you listen. Okay, so first of all, this is a highly important full moon for me and hopefully for you. I started this podcast in June on the Gemini new moon, which happened on June the 6th. And we are now at the culmination point of that new moon, which is the full moon in Gemini. So this is my 16th episode, and I'm pretty excited because I've changed and transformed so much over the last 6 months. I've gone through major transitions in my life. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in, supported me. If you have subscribed, liked, or shared this podcast, thank you so much. I really appreciate you putting my offerings out into the world and sharing them with your friends and family, with people that you think it will resonate with. Um, and I wonder what's happened for you over these last 6 months. How have you grown? How have you changed? How have you transformed? How have your dreams evolved? So, what I have to share today feels kind of big, and I really hope I can adequately put it into words. This full moon is happening on December the 15th at about 2 a.m. in Arizona time. This is happening at 23 degrees of Gemini, and the sun is in Sagittarius at 23 degrees. And this is the last full moon of 2024. So it's a culmination full moon. And as I mentioned earlier, you might want to be thinking back to June the 6th and what began for you around that time. That was the new moon when we were planting our seeds of intention. This is an important full moon with Jupiter being conjunct to the moon. Jupiter is our planet of expansion, and Jupiter operates in 12-year cycles. So whenever we're seeing Jupiter conjunct a full or new moon or any major aspect, we're seeing that this is an important turning point in our journey. Jupiter is our ability to see our life, grow beyond our current circumstances, expand our worldview, create more meaning with our life. So this full moon has this feeling of excitement. Jupiter is exciting. It's like, what's next on our adventure of life? But with this growing sense of excitement, even being in Sagittarius season, if you tuned in for the new moon episode that I talked about, there's excitement with Sagittarius and with Jupiter energy. And the other side of excitement is the feeling of fear. Um, you know, when we get excited for growth, we also push up against the edges of where we're comfortable. And once we get to those edges, we begin to feel fear and anxiety. So there could be a lot of emotions that are coming up for you during this time. Because when it comes time to change something, we're invited to be flexible and we're needing to step into something that is unknown. And so this feels like there's something unknown that you're being invited into. So there's an invitation to see, to know, to imagine, what is it that you're afraid to be? Because whatever it is that we are afraid to be is what our soul is calling us towards. I always say this, follow your fears because your fears are where your freedoms are. And in astrology, our North Node in our 10th house are always pointing us towards these things that we are also afraid of. Because this is the expansion that we want to reach in this lifetime. And expansion is exciting and scary. This is very connected with this duality energy of Gemini and Sagittarius. It is a lot of both. And we have to remember that it's okay to feel either one. And if you tuned into the last episode, feeling is so important, right? That's a big part of what we're here to do. We can't just ignore the fear. We have to go towards the fear, feel it, because it's on the other side of the fear is where the excitement is. So this feels like such an important podcast if you're tuning in. This is a channeled message for this period of time. And I really hope that it supports you in connecting with 2024 and moving into 2025. So as I always say, the full moon relates to the 2 weeks after the moon, but it also is very significant to the following 6 months until we get to the next new moon in Gemini, and that's going to happen on May the 26th of 2025. So this moon is at 23 degrees of Gemini, and this could be more significant for you if you have planets or points from about 19 to 28 degrees of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, or Pisces. So check your chart if you have, or get a transit reading if you don't know how to read your chart, and an astrologer can show you how to do that. So this full moon is a time when we are highly aware. All the energy of our bodies is more sensitive and active because we correspond to the moon and the cycles of the moon. This means all of our feelings, all of our emotions, all of our memories, they're becoming more aware. The full moons can also be times of overwhelm. And this is because the thoughts and the feelings that we have maybe haven't been digested, or we haven't been working with them. So they come up around the full moon in order to be witnessed. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, the reminder here is take time to witness your thoughts and feelings, because the more you witness them, the less overwhelming they will be. The more you witness them, the more understanding you will have about what your thoughts and feelings are trying to show you or teach you. And then the more that you can tune in with the excitement and the anticipation of the full moon. Because you can think of a full moon as a time of blooming. We can even think of it as a fertility cycle when the egg is ready to ovulate. This is the same concept of our inner ideas, our inner dreams, a new part of us that is ready to be fertilized and activated, and new life is ready to be formed. So it's really tuning in with these moon cycles can be so valuable and important. And I highly recommend writing down what's happening for you around this full moon. There's no right or wrong about what should or shouldn't be happening, but just tracking with your own journey is incredibly valuable and supports you to really connect with that Jupiter energy of the long-term picture of your life. You know, Jupiter's that 12-year cycle. That's a long period of time. And when you begin to see your life in a bigger spectrum, it takes the pressure off of needing to fix something or do something or make everything perfect right now. Like, you're on a journey, and invest in this journey. So the energy axis of Gemini and Sagittarius is this axis. It's all about truth, communication, information, wisdom, understanding, right? These are two highly curious energies. They're intellectually savvy. Gemini is gathering information and details and communicating and learning, and it's quick, it's witty, it wants to make things happen. Gemini has lots of ideas and wants to plant a seed everywhere. Gemini also tends to be a much more logical and analytical way of communicating. It's very day-to-day, text messages, emails, communicating little bits of information. The sun is in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is a lot of communication, but it's going deeper. It's going beyond what we thought that we knew based on all the little information, and it's creating a bigger philosophy. It even is studying philosophies. It has to do with looking for truth and deeper understanding and looking beyond what we see in the little details of things and piecing things together in a bigger view. Like I said, Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. And so we have this longer term perspective with the Sagittarius energy. Now, in shadow, Gemini is an energy that tends to get very overwhelmed, live in constant worry, be very anxious, ADD, can't listen to others, has a difficult time resting, can be quite restless. And the Sagittarius shadow can be similar. Worry, lots of thoughts, too many thoughts. It can also be very self-righteous, a know-it-all energy, not giving other people time to communicate where they are or what they're thinking. So it's important to recognize the two dual energies that we're dealing with. And Gemini and Sagittarius are the dualistic and very dualistic energies in the zodiac. Every zodiac sign is dualistic, but these are one of the most dualistic signs that exist, where people who have strong planets or points will really vacillate between the extremes and have a harder time maybe coming into the middle. Now, in this chart, the moon is conjunct Jupiter, and Mercury and the sun are in Sagittarius. So we have a great mutual reception between Jupiter and Mercury. This is going to amplify all these energies, and it's also going to amplify the gifts and the shadows. So this is going to show up in this one exact way. This could show up in many different ways, but certainly what I'm going to talk about next is what's really important. Okay, but first, Mercury is also stationing direct on the day of this full moon. And this tells us that what's happening during this cycle, during this moon, is pretty significant. It's going to be bringing some really, really good clarity to us, a higher perspective possibly, and deeper understanding about what it is that you're wanting in your life. This could be like new ideas that are coming to you, new ways of communicating. This could be understanding yourself at a deeper level, seeing some of your inner stories, maybe even seeing some possibilities for yourself or your life or what it is that you're wanting to create. And this could also be like you're finally able to embody a more flexible and mutable energy. Because Sagittarius and Gemini are all about shifting and changing. These can be energies that help us get unstuck. And getting unstuck has to do with being more flexible, right? You think of Taurus or Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius being fixed and kind of rigid. And what is needed is more flexibility. So that might be something you want to tune in with for this full moon. Of course, some people are going to get more stuck in the loops. And that's very Gemini and Sagittarius, but these are loops in the mind. Now, I said this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to come back to it. Gemini and Sagittarius are about connecting with what is fulfilling, with things that are meaningful and feel like they have value, feel like they matter, feel like they connect us to our purpose. And when you really tune in with this, you can actually really connect with a deep, deep, deep sense of gratitude and meaning for the littlest things in your life. Sagittarius can tend to get like over the top. We need this really big thing to happen. But with the moon in Gemini, it's about seeing the little things in your life. Having a vehicle, being grateful that you have access to clean water, being grateful that you have a phone that you can communicate with people, being grateful that you have a computer, that you can listen to podcasts, right? The more that we can like tune into these little things, the less we get stuck in that really heady, big-minded energy, which there's absolutely something to having a grand vision. I love that. I think that's important. But we don't want to forget about the little minute details of life. These are really strongly connected with a deep sense of being present and being really connected with who we are and where we are. Even something like, you know, cleaning your home, like that's a sense of really valuing your life and yourself, cleaning your bathroom, like being the steward over your dishes and your laundry and not seeing them as some difficult chore that you have to do, but like, oh, this is a part of my adventure. This is a part of me. Um, and this brings so much more meaning to our everyday lives. And a lot of people, when they get really like, they got a lot of physical pleasures or a lot of tangible success, they'll lose touch with all of these little parts of life, like doing the dishes, not finding that as valuable. And that ends up getting them really out of touch and dissatisfied with life because so much of our life is connected with the mundane. And if we aren't loving and enjoying and being present with the mundane, then we're never going to be satisfied. And that's a huge struggle for the Gemini Sagittarius energy with this kind of, racing mind and just being anxious and trying to get somewhere instead of like being where you are, like that's your bed, that's your clothing, that's, your vehicle. And the way that you're treating these parts of your life, the way you act towards all these little things, like the chores to keep your house nice, how you act to that is actually how you're treating yourself. It's an indication of how you're actually um, responding to yourself because this is your daily life. It's nobody else's life. There's no one else to come and do it for you, right? So this has me really connecting with that Gemini Sagittarius struggle of overthinking, oversharing, over worrying, anxious, anxiety, right? What is it about this that is so dysregulating? And it's Gemini actually rules the nervous system. And so many people who have strong Gemini or Sagittarius placements have a really dysregulated nervous system. And this is because Gemini rules the nervous system. So what is the nervous system, right? Well, we talk about it all the time. People are always saying, come do this, regulate your nervous system. But really, what is it? And it is complex. It's not one thing, right? For one, we have our central nervous system. This is the major regulation and communication guide of our physical body, our brain and our spinal cord. And these two are interpreting the messages of the nerves in our body. So it's these messages that are coming in from the nerves that regulate our thoughts, our movements, and our feelings. The central nervous system is like the center of all mental activity. That's how it's defined. All our thoughts and all our memories. Now, there's also something called the peripheral nervous system. And these are the nerves that branch out from the spinal cord and deliver messages to the central nervous system. So these messages that are coming from the nerves, these are the inner stories that we're telling ourselves. And these inner stories, these messages are electric signals that are being sent through the body because the body is energy and it's electric. Now we call these electric signals neurons. And this is why I use the word neuropathways, because the neurons create these neuropathways and they travel throughout every single part of our body. So these electric signals, these inner stories, these messages are impacting every single thing about you. All your thoughts, all your memories, everything you're learning, everything you're feeling. It's impacting how you move, your ability to balance your body, to coordinate. It's even impacting your sleep, how you breathe, how you respond to stress, so much more, right? So this is incredibly, incredibly important. We can even break this down further scientifically and spiritually. So scientifically, we have the somatic nervous system. That's voluntary movements. This is like we choose to do something. This is our awareness and our consciousness, if we think of it spiritually. And then we also have the autonomic nervous system. That's the scientific word. The spiritual word would be the shadow and the unconscious. The autonomic nervous system regulates the things we do without thinking about them. And that's exactly what the shadow and the unconscious are. It's every story, everything that we're operating out of without thinking consciously about it. Oh my gosh. So, Gemini is so important for us to pay attention to because this is the power of your mind. Your mind is shaping every single part of your physical body and your daily life and all of your experiences. And we're either doing this intentionally or unintentionally, or with awareness and consciousness or unconsciously. And if you've tuned in with me before, you'll know that the majority of our mind, our thoughts, feelings are happening at an unconscious level. The majority of our life is happening at that autonomic level. It's unconscious. And this is because we have programmed ourselves to operate that way. Now, there's no right or wrong here. It's not good or bad that we have done this. It's just a matter of realizing that we have done it and that we don't have to keep doing it. We want to understand that we program ourselves for a reason, to make life easier and to keep ourselves safe. So we're programming ourselves to respond to the outside world. This is Gemini, and it's the mind. And it means that we're telling ourselves a story about what everything means. We're telling ourselves a story about whether or not we are safe. We're telling ourselves a story about what we're responsible for, if we're a victim or if we're a hero, if we're treated fairly or if we're not treated fairly. We are constantly telling ourselves an inner story. And like I said, most of this is happening unconsciously. This is because we began to tell ourselves an inner story at around 1 or 2 years old. And this inner story is like based on, well, this inner story is not based on cognitive discernment, meaning there's no deep understanding. There's no intellectual discernment happening. Because from the time we're 1 to 7, we're in this very strong programming mode. And this mode is strictly based on self-preservation and survival. A child's mind and intellect is about taking everything personally. So while the child's mind is beautiful in that it's able to use its imagination and can see the unseen, and it's exceptionally creative and there's so much beauty to the child's mind. All of that's wonderful. But a child's mind cannot interpret deep meaning from the world. It cannot create conscious awareness because we come in on a journey to learn how to become conscious. But what this means is that we are, as adults, living out of that child mind. And the child mind's inherently always viewing life as a victim. Life happens to a child, and everything that a child experiences is taken personally. Even if the child is saying, that they understand it's not personal. Children do not understand that things are not personal because they don't have the cognitive awareness to do that. This is the unconscious mind. It's what it does. It creates a story that is personal. And this is one of the reasons I'm not an advocate for a lot of the inner child work that's being offered today in the world. We don't want to revert back to the child's state of being or mind because that is inherently limiting us. We actually want to free the child state from running our lives because the child state is the unconscious state. That's where we end up continuing to live from this taking everything personally state until we learn how to awaken, that we have choice. This is what awakening is. It's not having a bunch of knowledge or information. Awakening is not about knowing esoteric things. You don't have to know anything esoteric to awaken. Awakening is about knowing yourself. It's not about knowing something no one else knows. It's actually about knowing you and bringing awareness to your unconscious mind and to the inner story that's directing your life. So awakening is about autonomy. It's about choice. It's about knowing your shadow because, again, the shadow and the unconscious are the same thing. And remember, the shadow and the unconscious are the mind that is in the autonomic nervous system. The Gemini, it's our nervous system is so strongly connected to our shadow and unconscious. The child state's inherently not capable of choice, autonomy, and action. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the human journey. We come in unable to have choice, autonomy, and action. And we're learning throughout our life how to use our mind with intention and with consciousness. So if you're trying to live out of the child state, then you're going to be stuck in that polarity thinking that somehow childhood was better than adulthood. And that is a huge misconception because the older we get, the more awareness we can have and the more choice we have. So the only way child would be better is if you want to stay stuck in the unconscious mind. But as we can see, the unconscious mind is actually inherently not where joy is found. So to become conscious has to be with integrating, not going backwards, not going into the illusion of childhood being some incredible thing that we missed out on. Rather, the awareness that consciousness is becoming present, being able to choose who we want to be in this moment, being able to have fun and play and celebrate without being blocked by our own inner stories. It's about choosing how to interpret the world in a way that's powerful. So this is not a matter of semantics. I do want to be really clear about this because a lot of Gemini and Sagittarius energies are going to want to be like, well, that's just like one way of saying, no, it's subtle energy. And it's very important to pay attention to subtle energy. Everything is subtle energy. And Gemini will explain this so precisely because Gemini energy is always showing us how sensitive we are because it's our nervous system and our nervous system's incredibly sensitive. And you can't hide this. You can't hide it from yourself. You cannot hide anxiety. You cannot hide your worries. If you cannot hide digestive issues, right? These are signs that you're not paying attention to your subtle energy. There is absolutely 100% no shame to that. It's just that the body, these are signs that the body is saying, there's something you don't understand. Pay attention. There's something to pay attention to here. There's something to look at. There's something to understand. You know, you can't hide depression. You can't hide frustration. You know, you can't hide this constant need to move your hand, a little tick. You can't hide this constant need to like touch your face or move your hair, or if your lip is twitching, you know, you can't hide physical ailments. Our body is telling on us all the time. Our body tells on us. When we have an ailment, our body is saying something's going on in your mind that you need to pay attention to. There's a story here that's disempowering you. There's a story here that's not making you feel good. So every time we have these physical experiences, we want to tune in and ask ourselves, what is it that I am saying to myself? What am I doing? I've experienced all the things I just mentioned. There's been times where I've had anxiety that felt like an elephant on my chest. I was in a situation I didn't know how to get out of, and my body was saying, I'm not okay. It was alarming me, alerting me. I need to change. I need to get out of this situation because I'm not okay. And over the summer, I had an extremely profound experience. I had an inner story of attachment to my former partner. I had severed communication with him, which was exceptionally difficult for me. Um, and my inner story was that he was the only person I could ever see myself with. And I really didn't know how I was going to make it without him. And my body showed me how intense this inner story of attachment to him really was, because in July, I began to experience pain in my low back and shooting down my leg that progressed and progressed until it became so intense that I was completely debilitated. I could barely walk. I couldn't eat. I had to go to the emergency room, and I was extremely afraid because it was such acute pain and I had no answers. But I knew what it was. I knew that it was my attachment to him, and my attachment was in my story. And so another little interesting story to this, that really taught me more about this subtle energy and taught me even more about how to work with my own mind. Um, a friend of mine, gave me some gummies to help me with the pain because I had never been in this much pain in my entire life. It was excruciating. It was acute. There was nothing that would stop it, no amount of pain medicine. Not that I even really took any, but the doctor told me there's nothing to stop this pain because it was nerve pain. And when she gave me these gummies, I thought they were CBD gummies. And I ended up just taking two because I was in so much pain, I didn't pay attention. And about 20 minutes later, I realized that these were not CBD gummies, that they were THC gummies. And I have literally no experience with THC gummies. I haven't smoked weed in over 20 years. I don't have any desire to. So this was extremely unexpected. And while it was a hugely challenging experience already because I was in so much pain, um, this showed me so much about my mind, and it taught me how powerful my mind was. And through this experience, I was able to work intentionally because all my fears came up. As soon as I realized that this was THC and I had taken a large amount, I started to have my fears come up. Being out of control, being in so much pain, not being able to walk, what was going to happen? And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I'm telling myself this story, and this story is making it worse. It's making all this pain worse. So I began to work with my story, and I put on things that I could listen to that would help me to get a hold of my story. And it showed me how powerful my mind was and how much more work there is to do around freeing my mind from the stories of fear and pain and not being able to accept those things in my life. So I share that to say that because this was such a profound experience, and this is the beauty of our nervous system and our Gemini energy constantly showing us that we aren't okay. And for me, this got highly elevated where all my thoughts were I was so aware of them, that I actually had the choice to change them. And there's a lot more that happened throughout that experience, but I'm not going to share about that now. Um, so this awareness of the Gemini energy is incredibly important, meaning that we can use our mind intentionally. Now, typically with Gemini energy, we use our mind intentionally for things like work, solving other people's problems. Um, we use our mind to overthink things that we said or other people said, but we can actually use these thoughts in a way that will serve us. It just takes more intentional work. Now, our mind and our thoughts are subtle energy. And this is why I say it's so important that every single thing you put into your mind is what is going to support your empowerment. That means everything you listen to, every podcast, every TV show, everything you read, and every image you look at, they're all programming you. Are you programming yourself with things that you want to program yourself with, or are you programming yourself with things that do not serve your highest good? I found in my life that it's very easy to program myself with things that don't feel good. And about 5 or 6 years ago, well, honest, probably more than that, maybe about 10 years ago, I started becoming aware of this. I did not have the language for it at this time, but I started to be aware of how influenced I was by what I was listening to and looking at. So everything's programming you, and the way that you talk to yourself, the way you talk to other people, what you tell yourself about yourself, what you tell yourself about what things mean, this is all programming you. So on this Gemini full moon, I really encourage you to do some inner inquiry. Can you identify stories that you're telling yourself that aren't serving you? Can you identify something you're listening to or watching that's programming you in a way that really isn't expanding your mind and is instead constricting it? Can you identify a story you've told yourself about yourself that you want to let go of? And if so, can you replace it with something that you want to believe? It's very challenging to pay attention to subtle energy and details. And I know because I've done this for myself for the last 12 years. And this is what I do in the somatic release and reprogramming work with clients. I'm extremely tuned to subtle energies. This is why you will find me not aligning with a lot of people or a lot of things, because the subtle energy is what shifts everything. Once you realize your inner story, you then need to figure out what to do about it and how to reprogram it. And this is, again, more subtle energy. This is why I do one-to-one work with clients, because you might be able to identify the story, but then you need to know what to say to yourself to reprogram it to get your power back. And the majority of wisdom or insights that are out there are really not helping people on a subtle energy level, because they are speaking still from a victim mindset, which is the child's mind, which is this idea that something is out to get you, something is wrong outside of you. And those are all victim viewpoints. They're child mindsets. And I'm not shaming anybody for that. It's just that this is really important if you want to reprogram, if you want to get your power back, if you want to be in your authenticity. Now, I'm not saying to overly focus on the details of things outside of you, because it can get you stuck in loops. And that's the Gemini looping on details of what someone said or did, or something that you said, something that really doesn't matter. This is just distraction, right? What we want to align to, what we want to become aware of, is what's happening on the inside of us. Gemini has the capacity to become a master of one's own mind. So any Gemini placements that you have, or where Gemini is in your chart, this is an indication of you needing to become a master of your mind in this area of your life. Gemini energy is Um, being able to connect to your vision and the details of your vision, not the details of everybody else's vision, not the details of everything else that's happening, but what about your vision? So if you're getting stuck on something that's outside of you, this goes back to that story I was telling you. You want to see where you're attached to something outside of you. And with the Sagittarius and Gemini energy, we're invited to use the mind to detach, to use the mind to connect back to the self, asking the self, what am I creating with my life? For example, if you're telling yourself, I can't figure out what I want, then you might want to be telling yourself, I am here to figure out what I enjoy and what feels authentic to me, right? That's a very simple shift of the narrative. Are you telling yourself you can't figure out what you want, or are you telling yourself, I'm here to figure out what I enjoy and what feels authentic to me? Because one gives you direction and the other leaves you without anything. So we can use the mind to anchor into our own hopes and dreams. This is what I want to invite you to do is use your mind to weave meaning into your life. Now, Mercury has been retrograde in Sagittarius, and this has been bringing up some things that we've needed to see, witness, and learn about ourselves. And with it turning direct, stationing direct on the day of this moon, there is clarity that can follow from this aspect, kind of encouraging us to move forward with something that we've realized during the last 2 weeks before this full moon. And this could relate back to something that you planted around June the 6th of this year when we were in that new moon of Gemini. So can you connect the dots with something here? This could be subtle. What's been growing? What's been changing? What are you recognizing about your inner story? We do have Neptune in a square. It's not a strong square, but it is a 4-degree square. So there's a lifting of some illusions. Saturn's in a trine to Juno. This is definitely supporting us to take steps away from all that tension we may have been feeling over a partnership or a business partner. So new opportunities for breaking through, being in our personal integrity, seeing a way forward. Be very aware that you're not falling back into patterns with this energy. There is a great opportunity here to let go of attachments. Now, one last thing I want to mention about this moon is the Sabian symbol, because it feels so relevant. The Sabian symbol is children skating on ice. Such a beautiful image. And the feeling I have that comes up with this image is coming back to this idea of flexibility. This is one of the gifts of the body and the mind of a child. It's flexible. There's an ability to adapt and change and to be unafraid to fall down or take risks. And there's also this subtlety of the skates on the ice. This feels important. Like each movement of the skate on the ice makes a groove in the ice. And this is like each thought that we have making a groove in the body. This is like the neural pathways. So remember what happens like when you're ice skating, and once everybody's skated for too long, the ice then gets too many grooves in it, and you really can't skate anymore because you start tripping on the grooves. And this is like those neural pathways. Every neural pathway is a groove in your nervous system. And if the grooves aren't serving you and are causing more anxiety, then you have to stop skating, allow the ice to be resurfaced, become smooth again, so that you can, and that is like a picture of reprogramming the grooves. It's like, oh, like we can reprogram these grooves and then you can begin to skate again. And I say this, I like this too, because it makes me think of how there is no perfection in this lifetime. We're always creating grooves in our and neural pathways, and we have to always be updating them. That's why I tell clients this all the time. You are the most important person to pay attention to. And the more you pay attention to yourself, the more you will go and trust these cycles of moving in and out. Yep, you skate for a while and then you need to resurface, bring some smoothness, right? Slow it down so that you can bring new programs in, bring new grooves in. So this happens to be a great time to do this with this full moon. Some things that you could do to support yourself is definitely journaling, writing, using these tools to become aware of what's happening on the inside. I definitely recommend things like sound healing or breath work or a meditation, a place where you get some space to listen, to have no distractions. This could also include sitting outside in the sun without an agenda. This could be like staring up at the clouds. This could be going for a walk or going to the beach or looking at looking at an overlook. The most important thing to remember if when doing any of the things I just mentioned is that you have no outside information coming in, no podcast, no music, no audio, no person to distract you, no pet, no other energy that's distracting you from becoming aware of what's inside of you. Now, you want to expose yourself. This is another thing that you could do to support yourself during this time is expose yourself to ideas or concepts that challenge you and trigger you. This is because anything that challenges you and triggers you is asking you to think more consciously about your own story. So you could ask yourself, what do I think about this subject and why? And why is this such a trigger for me that I can't hold space for somebody being different? A good example of this, because this has been really big in this period of time, is, are you really triggered by politics? You may want to ask yourself, what is my story around political beliefs? Perhaps your story is that your belief system is the only good one and the only righteous one. And if someone doesn't see it this way, then they're saying that you aren't good and righteous. So we want to think deep about what are we really, that would be taking somebody else's beliefs personally, right? And that's the child mind, making it personal. When we step into conscious awareness, we begin to see that different political beliefs have nothing to do with you. They don't mean a thing about you. And there's a lot that could be said about this, but probably not outside of a one-to-one session, because it takes deep contemplation. It takes compassion. It takes sitting with these concepts and not being attacked by them. And this is why there's so much polarization in things like our belief systems, because we're not able to sit and hold space in a very conscious way. But you can do this for yourself and you can learn to do this. And so this brings me to kind of one of the most profound ways to work with this season and with this energy, and that is with a one-to-one session with someone who has done significant shadow work, who has worked with their own unconscious mind, and who is understanding their own subtle energy. So obviously, I've shared already, I do one-to-one work. I'm very passionate about this. But if you want to work with somebody and you're not in the Phoenix area, find somebody in your area that you can work with. All right, quick recap on the questions to contemplate. Can you identify an inner story that's not serving you? Can you identify a story you've told yourself about yourself that you're ready to let go of? If so, what can you replace it with that will empower you? So if you want support in working with your inner story, if you want support in releasing grief, in releasing blocks, in working with your shadow and unconscious mind, reach out to me directly. You can find me on Instagram at Kismet Mystic, my website, kismetmystic.com. And I have several different options. I do the in-person somatic release and reprogramming work. This is in an office, a private office. I do in-session work I do in-person work with a walk and reprogramming session in nature. And then I offer over the phone counsel where we can also work on the shadow and the unconscious. I'm so passionate about rewiring our nervous system, our unconscious mind, reprogramming. And it is my sincere hope that you're finding your way to remember, reconnect, reprogram, and align to your most authentic self, that you can be empowered, that you can live with a celebratory heart and true enjoyment of your life because you deserve it. So I hope this full moon energy expands you beyond anything that you could have yet imagined. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye for now.